I'm Teisha Bader with Shalom TV's news update for Friday, July the 18th, 2014. Israel launched a ground operation in Gaza late last night and early this morning suffered its first casualty. 20-year-old Sergeant First Class Eitan Barak from Herzliya was killed early this morning during the ground operation. 2 other IDF soldiers were wounded, and at least 14 Hamas terrorists have been killed. Last night, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Defense Minister Moshe Ya'alon instructed the IDF to begin its ground operation in Gaza with the main objective of destroying Hamas and other terror groups' infrastructure in the area, including destroying Hamas's extensive terror tunnel network, tunnels that lead from Gaza into Israel. As we reported to you yesterday, such a tunnel was used yesterday by Hamas terrorists in an attempt to carry out a mass terror attack against Israelis of Kibbutz Sufa, which was thwarted by the IDF. Last night, infantry, armored engineering, artillery, and intelligence troops working together with IDF forces from the sea and the air entered Gaza, as well as with cooperation from the Shin Bet and other security forces. Meanwhile, rocket fire continues into Israel today. Over 50 rockets were fired from Gaza into southern communities, Beersheva, Ofakim, and Eshkol since the ground operation began. Prime Minister Netanyahu spoke yesterday about the attempted attack on Kibbutz Sufa with U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry and explained Israel's decision to launch the ground operation to target the threat of further terror infiltration. Kerry reaffirmed the U.S. strong support for Israel's right to defend itself, urging that the operation should be a precise one. The State Department said Kerry stressed to Netanyahu his concern for civilians on both sides and the need to restore the 2012 ceasefire agreement with Hamas in Gaza as soon as possible. Kerry reportedly has been meeting with Jewish leaders about the crisis in Israel. He met with a delegation from the Conference of Presidents of major American Jewish organizations this morning, and yesterday met with a delegation of Jewish members of Congress. And over 600 people turned out in Washington, D.C. yesterday to show their support for Israel, calling for an end to rocket fire from Gaza and rejecting any comparison between Israel and terror group Hamas, who they emphasized puts its people in harm's way while Israel does its best to avoid harming civilians. Democratic Representative Brad Sherman of California said at the rally that if keeping score of those killed is the way to decide which side is right, then, quote, by that reckoning, you look at World War II and you see that Eisenhower is a war criminal due to the high number of German casualties. Republican Representative Trent Franks of Arizona said that if Hamas would protect their own children as much as Israel protects their own children, we would have a chance for peace. And director of the Religious Action Center for Reform Judaism, Rabbi David Saperstein, said at the rally, never before in history has a nation taken the steps Israel has to avoid civilian killing, adding that we must never, never turn our backs when civilians die. The rally was sponsored by the Jewish Community Relations Council of Greater Washington. The Simon Wiesenthal Center praised French Prime Minister Manuel Valls yesterday for canceling a pro-Palestinian, pro-Hamas rally that was set to take place in Paris tomorrow, Saturday. The center had expressed its concern over the risk to the Jewish community in Paris, especially in light of last Sunday's incident where rioters tried to storm a synagogue there. Wiesenthal Center Dean and founder Rabbi Marvin Heyer said, "Let us remember this is not an attack on free speech and the right to assemble. This is to prevent a reoccurrence for last week's outrageous, violent attacks in broad daylight that threatened hundreds of Jews assembled in the synagogue." Authorities in Bulgaria say they have positively identified the man who blew up a bus full of Israeli tourists 2 summers ago in the town of Burgas, killing 5 Israelis on board and a Bulgarian bus driver as well as himself. 23-year-old Mohammed Hassan El Husseini was identified through DNA testing. He was born in Lebanon and also held French citizenship. The Bulgarian prosecutors have previously named 2 suspects who helped Husseini, as 32-year-old Lebanese-born Meliad Farah, who held Australian citizenship, and 25-year-old Lebanese-born Hassan El Haj Hassan, who held Canadian citizenship. Those 2 remain at large. However, authorities in Bulgaria say they plan to put them on trial even in absentia and that the investigation is ongoing. And today marks the 20th anniversary of another terror attack, the bombing of the AMIA Jewish Community Building in Buenos Aires, Argentina, took place on July the 18th of 1994, killing 85 people and wounding hundreds of others. It is widely believed that Hezbollah, with backing from Iran, was behind the attack, and today the Anti-Defamation League repeated its call for justice. ADL National Chair Barry Curtis Lusher and National Director Abe Foxman said the evidence is clear and compelling that the Iranian government played a role in this devastating terrorist attack, adding that the international community must demand justice for the killers of the 85 victims and the loved ones they left behind. And that's Shalom TV's news update for Friday, July the 18th. Remember, live Shabbat services are coming up at 6 o'clock from New York City's Central Synagogue. I'm Teisha Bader. Shabbat Shalom.